Welcome to That Backyard Property Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Killiner, and I'm a father, a husband, and a mortgage broker. Our goal is to inspire, educate, and empower people through property. Whether you're a first home buyer, whether you're looking to upgrade or downsize or invest in property, then we're here to help you. Each week, we'll have a special guest that's an expert in their field, and they'll guide us through all of your questions that you might have, plus a lot of other information. So let's do this. Welcome back to another episode of That Backyard Property Podcast. Today is a special one. I am absolutely thrilled to have a multi-business owner, a child and family therapist, a dear friend, a mum, a wife, and everything in between, Sarah Bolitho. Welcome.
Thank you. Very privileged to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's really going to be a different type of episode to the standard accounting and financial planning and whatnot. And so I'm really excited to explore that.
We're going to have some fun, I think.
We are. So child, family, therapist, there's obviously a lot in there to unpack, and we will shortly. What I wanted to go into first of all was talking about a home, because that's something that's really close to you. It's close to me, and obviously close to people listening. And a home is more than just the bricks and mortar.
Absolutely.
And to start off with, I'd love to hear what your feelings are around a home and what memories and what that brings up in you when we talk about a home.
So I have a few different thoughts about this. So for some context, I had three homes growing up. So I started out in what I still think of as our family home. And then my parents separated when I was about 9. And so then there was the next house where it was like the family had been separated and everybody left that house. There was that one, and then there was another one a little bit later on. And all of them have very, very different things. And I think about the family home being the first one as the typical construct of there was mum and dad and there was me and my brother. But it's an interesting one because the memories that I have of it are very little. I have very little memories of it in terms of like being a young kid and it being, I guess, fun and free. It feels like it was probably quite restrictive. And then obviously my parents went through separation over a couple of years. And so it was quite hostile.
Quite drawn out.
And a long process. Like I can remember. So I guess I have a different lens of it now because over the years I've like understood and unpacked a lot of it. And so what I thought was happening as a kid, I still think of that. Yeah. But now I've made a lot more sense of it. So, for example, my parents had 2 piles of dishes on the kitchen sink. There were 2 meals getting cooked So they were going through a separation. Yeah. And in my head, it was 2 years, but it could have been 2 weeks. It could have been 5 years. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, they didn't speak. So there was and so what I now know was that my dad actually didn't want the separation to happen. But when I think about my mum and dad, I'm like, obviously they were going to separate. Like they were but like 2 very, very different people. And when you think about, like attitudes to finances even, like very, very different. Attitudes to just life in general and adventure and and I'm very much my mum, very like, take the risk and do the thing and like jump off the cliff. And
maybe that's why you need that other person to just hold people back as well.
Hold you back a little bit, So really funny. So I think there were a lot of memories there that were like, I can remember like my favorite game used to be playing Dizzy Dollies in the hallway. We had this beautiful like big, wide hallway with wooden floors and it was really slippy. So we used to play Dizzy Dollies where we'd just like, me and my brother would spin around as many times as you could and then you would push each other down the hallway, aiming to like slide on the socks. It would just like, you're dizzy so you just fall over. And like that was one of my favourite games. And I can remember sitting in the conservatory. We had this like lovely sunroom out the back, sitting in the conservatory, like with this karaoke microphone in fancy dress. And like, there was definitely some like fun and really playful moments, but I can like they diminished as the tension in the house increased. Yeah. And then from there, the next house was like everybody processing this separation. And like we went from being a family. And the day that we moved out of the house was like the last day that my mum and dad were ever in the same room together. Yeah.
Wow.
So like they never spoke again. They never sat in the same room. My mum used to write letters and he'd recognise the handwriting and rip them up.
It's a lot to process at any age.
Yeah. There was nothing. So I guess for me now, when I think about creating a home with our family, I'm like, it's fun. It's a space where kids can take up the space. And I know we've spoken about this before as well. Yeah. And thinking about how we can... So one of the things I think is home is a place of rest where you can rest because you're worthy of rest and it's not contingent on homework and it's not contingent on having done your jobs and your chores. Like if you need rest, you take it. And that's something that very much like was not something that we did.
Do you find that as you've progressed down this career path, which you're so incredibly good at, it's helped you process a lot of that or understand it at least?
Yeah, 100%. So I primarily work with children and families in that really critical developmental period of like 0 to 5, where we know that so much of the neural pathways are being developed. And for me, I think that's it's such a critical time of development, but it's also so flipping pure.
Yeah.
So I think there's two things. One is that I always knew I'd work with people. And the second part is it is quite selfish in kind of one aspect, because it has taken me down this really like path of growth and understanding and compassion and like acceptance. And so much of it now I can see lots of what I experienced growing up and lots of the thoughts and attitudes and even things that I thought about each of my parents, can now see it in a way that's actually really compassionate. I'm like, they were just really genuinely doing what they thought was best, whilst being really hurt as well.
It's quite a fascinating thought that I know that it's been a realization since becoming a father that you hold your parents on this pedestal, which is a wonderful thing to do, and I still do. But you also, when you become a parent, you then realize that they were people before parents as well, and you kind of look at them differently and go, well, you have your faults, you have your human aspects that I didn't even realize before, and now I understand that you probably covered it up, or you didn't even notice. Yeah. And there's and as you said, compassion, where just trying your best because you've never done it before. Yeah. And you genuinely have never done it before. Now, what do I do here? At every aspect, and it's more so in the early years, and then as you move along, and you must see that every day from all the people you help.
Yep. And also I think they were a human before, but they're still humaning. And I think so many parents struggle because they try to just be right all the time, or they're trying to be an idea of, and like they're trying to be the parent that they have an idea of, whilst also not owning the humanness of it. And what I actually think is that kids don't suffer because of our humanness. They suffer when they don't have information to contextualize it. And so I see, I see my dad lobbing pots around the kitchen sink, and without any context and without any information. I think that's because of me. It's me that's made him mad. It's me that's the problem here. It's me that's been too loud this morning. It's me that's left a mess out. It's me that forgot to put the milk lid back on. Like, I don't know. right? He's out there being a human, doing his human things. He's probably had an email from work, or my mum's probably done something, or no idea. But every time I had no context to the story, it becomes about me, because that's what children do. That's how children develop. And so I think actually so much of it is owning it to children and being like, oh, I'm being a human again.
Yeah.
You know, like this isn't about you.
Yeah.
And helping children to understand that. And I think we're so afraid. We're so afraid emotionally, for a start. Like we are as a generation, I think, and largely the generations probably 2, if not 3 before us, are just terrified of our emotions. We're terrified of vulnerability.
Why do you think that is?
It's complicated.
Do you think it's because we're scared of what other people think, or you're scared of what?
I think there's a lot of that. So I think if we think about the way that nurture gets passed on, for example, let's just put my dad in this for context. My dad's mum was in an air raid shelter as a baby in the war. Like her family couldn't afford for her to cry.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing they could have done, right? And so if we think even about Maslow's hierarchy, they were safety first before any kind of love, any nurture, they were trying to survive. Food was on her rations. And even in the early years of my grandma, once the Second World War was over, they were still on rations. They were still recovering. They were still trying to put their lives back together from a world war, right? So she learned in her really formative early years that emotions weren't safe. People came and went. Like they lost many, many people that they knew. Nothing was really very permanent. Everything could change. And that formed who she was on an emotional level.
Do you think this is a really strange one, do you think those emotions always existed?
Yeah, 100%. So we know that children are born with primary emotions.
So they haven't,
they're present.
it's not as if these emotions have developed now. Those emotions were there, but they weren't allowed to be.
So they get suppressed. Yep. So the way that you deal with them is that you suppress them, you dissociate from them, or you express them. Well, expression wasn't safe, so we had to dissociate or we had to suppress. And so that becomes the blueprint of how. So that was her blueprint. She did the best she could with that, and then had to change it a little bit, and then had kids, and it gets more complicated from there. But so that was in my dad's genetic DNA. And so then he did a little bit with it and changed a few bits, not so many, but changed a few. And then he had us. And so we inherited through our DNA his blueprint. Yeah. And then obviously through the nurture and through the environment, changed a little bit of that. And then over the years have changed a little bit of that again. But I guess so when we think about why is it that people aren't vulnerable, is because people don't have a community safe enough to be vulnerable with. And then also the other thing that people tend to want to do is to fix it for them. So then emotion becomes about something that needs to be fixed, and it becomes about something that needs a solution. But most of the time it actually doesn't. It just exists.
Just exist.
It just is.
Yeah. It's funny when you're talking about contextualizing your own emotions to your children. Mm-hmm. And we've tried as parents really hard because of discussions with you, with our 2 daughters. And it's really funny watching that being expressed from our eldest now. And both my wife and I will say, like, I'm getting frustrated or I'm getting angry or whatever it might be, whatever emotion that we're starting to feel. And then now Clemmy does that, or it comes back to bite you as well. And she's going, Dad, you're getting frustrated again. And you're going, oh, I can't, like, what am I supposed to do now? Like, I'm being shown up. And then going to them afterwards, and this is the hardest part I find one of the hardest parts as a parent, is having something, a disagreement or whatever it might be with the child, and maybe you're right, whatever that means, and then turning around and telling them what emotion you just felt and that maybe you didn't deal with it in the right way, but that's all you knew. And it's been quite challenging doing that, and I don't know why. I don't know why that is challenging to tell a 4.5-year-old that you're sorry that you got a bit frustrated. Why is that challenging? How is that challenging? Because it shouldn't be.
And it's this process of repair, isn't it? And the thing that we have a 6, almost 7-year-old now, and so obviously cognitively that little bit further again than what your eldest is. And one of the things that we're really working on is responsibility. And this is the beautiful thing about repair. I'm not sorry that I was frustrated. You didn't deserve to be spoken that way.
Yeah, good point.
I was frustrated. I'm not sorry about that. That happened to me. Like, that happened. I'm overwhelmed. I've got too much going on. My head's spinning. My phone's pinging. You girls are singing bluey songs. Like, it's just a lot. Like, I'm not sorry that frustrated me.
Yeah.
I'm taking responsibility for the way that I spoke to you because you don't deserve that.
Really good way of putting it.
And so we're working on responsibility at the moment where, one kid does something to another kid, for example. Let's say one kid's broken down their tower and the second kid comes in and pushes them over. The second kid's bigger, so the younger kid gets hurt, right? Yeah, they shouldn't have pushed them, but also you shouldn't have knocked down the tower. So there's two people here that have responsibility for the bit that they contributed to the conflict. You guys are in conflict. You didn't want her pushing the tower down and you didn't want him pushing you over. So you guys have both treated each other in ways that you don't want to be treated. You take responsibility for your bit of the conflict and you take responsibility for your bit of the conflict. Because what often happens and what I experienced growing up is that the older one has to take responsibility and the younger one gets away with it.
Yeah.
That's not right.
I guess that's where you see any sort of memes around the older kid copping it and the younger kid getting a walk through life.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because literally about an hour ago, our eldest was building a tower and our youngest pushed it over and our eldest pulled her hair and obviously our youngest had the bigger reaction.
Yep.
And so you automatically are trying to comfort that.
Yep.
But the elder one was
just as annoyed.
Yeah, it was just as annoyed, if not more annoyed.
Yep.
And it's quite challenging to then be saying, well, it's okay that you're frustrated with that being done. Don't pull her hair. And it's a really strange conundrum whilst you're trying to get ready for school.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a really deep start. That's a
back to home.
Yeah, back to home. No, I think that was one of the reasons why I was so excited to talk with you today, because I feel that so much around this isn't spoken about. And I know you get a lot of people in your line of work reaching out to you about toilet training or watching too much TV or whatever it might be. And a lot of that is done anonymously. And I feel that the more we can have more open discussion around this, especially as parents, the better. And no doubt someone will listen to it and go, oh yeah, my daughter just had their tower knocked out. Like those things happen in everyday life. And it was funny when you said, what are we going to even talk about? A really good point, Sarah. I don't know what we're going to talk about. But I knew that it would be around a home and it would be around parenting. And something simple that you said the other day around mess really didn't trigger me. Maybe it did trigger me, if we're being honest. But because mess in our house is okay, but it's uncomfortable. Yeah. I feel genuinely really anxious and uncomfortable at it. Yeah. I don't know why, but I just do. Yeah. And we don't make them clean up after themselves as much as we probably should. I don't know. And so we're constantly just packing up. I feel like parenting is just packing up constantly. And your comment around, well, you don't want the last memories of their day to be packing up without getting the ability to just enjoy
So there's
it.
two things I think about that. One is that many parents feel the same way as you. That how am I going to teach them to be responsible for their things? How am I going to teach them to be a responsible member of this household? And how do I teach them that they've got jobs to do and that everybody contributes? And there's so much mess everywhere. All right, reduce the stuff. If you feel that you've got so much stuff that you're packing away all of the time, don't make this a kid problem. Take it away. So many houses are so full of stuff that kids are overwhelmed. They don't know how to play. Parents are overwhelmed. They don't know how to tidy it all up, how to store it, where to put it. Play doesn't happen. Frustration happens. And there's just perpetual conflict around stuff. Like, address the stuff rather than trying to punish the kid. You know? I guess that's one element of it. The other thing when I think about home is that so few children these days are actually playing in any way in terms of, and when I'm talking about playing, I'm talking about free play where children are truly at rest and they're self-directed in their play. And particularly, I read something just recently that was suggesting that by age 9, children are no longer engaging in any kind of imaginative play. And I just think that is devastating. And I think I know you're going to ask me why.
Yeah. I was trying to think of a better way to ask the why, but I may as well just say why.
Why? I think that we are overscheduled. Kids are going from school to after school sports, to swimming, to something else, to back home and eating dinner, and it's just go, 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 go. There's lots of organised sport, team sport, and a lot of kids are involved in team sport way ahead of what they're actually developmentally ready for. One of the other things is the screens and the devices and just the general overstimulation and the dopamine addiction that is coming with that. And the other one is that I think we're living in smaller houses with smaller backyards, and it's noise and it's mess and it's in a really small confined space, and parents are pretty overwhelmed by that. So the easiest thing to do is not have the noise and the mess happening in the house, because that's what's keeping the parents more comfortable. And so when we think about home, for me, I'm like, I want the noise. I want the mess is a sign of play. And one of the things that my kid is obsessed with at the moment is building forts and tents. Every morning I'm like, oh, it's like this eye roll happens where I'm like, oh, again, because it's every blanket, every couch cushion, every piece of furniture, the dining table, the benches, and it's like this ginormous fort in the lounge room. And every time my husband walks in, he's like, oh, can you come and clean up the mess?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's his fort. That's his tent. That's not mess.
Yeah.
And every time my husband comes in and says, oh, look at all this mess, you can see his little face just is like drops to the floor. And you can feel it. Like, he's hurt by that. He's like, that to him, that was creativity, that was building, that was engineering, that was construction, that was his hidey hole, that was his safe place. Yeah. That was like him on a secret mission from his siblings. Like, there was so much more that I don't know about what that was to him. But it's like, just gets reduced to a pile of mess. Okay, well, I'm probably not going to keep building forts anymore if that's what I get. And so with that, like, this little piece of play just dies every time. Something that do I trip up over Lego pieces and curse? Like, absolutely. But then also, do I put rules in place around where Lego can be played with? Like, it can be played in the corners of the house that I don't go.
It's funny you mention it, because there's a really good Bluey episode on the forts.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. And they've built a fort, and there's all the little rooms and all the little stuff, and the dad has to crawl through it. And you're just watching. Well, you're firstly watching Bluey because it's funny and accurate, and secondly, you do realize what creativity and imagination can do. I hadn't shared this with you, but for context for anyone listening other than my mum and dad, is that when Clemmy, our eldest, was 2.5, maybe 3, when we did the special playtime. And so Sarah guided us through special playtime where we created a safe space and a circle of toys that weren't her usual toys. And Clemmy, or our eldest, would be in the middle, and one of myself or my wife would be in the middle and play with her in the way that she wanted to. So it was all about questions rather than answers from us, and watching her tell you what to do and do this and play with this. And it went for 15 minutes. And Clemmy still asks about doing that. My wife and I had a nap on one of the recent weekends, and when we woke up, she had made a circle of toys and was doing her own special playtime. And you're watching that and going, that's all she wanted. Yeah. And we also needed our rest. Yeah. But if anyone was to want to do something similar to that, why is that important, and how do you go about doing it?
Yeah, so I guess it's about, so kids want to play with their parents. Like, there's no doubt about that. And many parents will say, I don't have the time for it. I don't know how to play, which is one of the biggest things that, parents don't know how to play. They want to die in a big, deep hole at the thought of drinking another sandy coffee from the Play-Doh bucket. But they just don't know what to do. They don't know how to play. And there's so much of this that comes in as well, like how much do I allow them to control me in play, and how much do I do what they tell me to do? And we're so in our heads about it. And what special playtime does is it just takes away all of that, and it says, do you know what, let's put a time frame on it, because you do have 20 minutes. This isn't going to go on forever. It is timed, it is contained, it's predictable, it's structured. We put the timer on, it's 20 minutes. And all that we're doing is allowing the child to lead, and we're following them. And in that process, we get this real rich vision into their inner world. We see their emotional context. We see their the challenges that they might have come up against. We witness them in their own mastery. And I know one of the things when we did special playtime, and I showed you and Mima how to do it with your eldest, was her tolerance to frustration in, just opening a box, for example, right? And so ordinarily we'd go over the top of her, we'd open the box, I can help you, like, just don't be so frustrated about it, I can help, I can solve it, I can fix it. And in special playtime, we're going to sit there and we're going to hold that space for it and say, really trying to figure that out. You're trying it a different way. That's not working either. I'm not doing anything until I'm invited in to help. And then she might get to a point where her frustration is no longer tolerable. And at which point we might say, I'm here if you'd like some help. And 9 times out of 10, they don't. Actually don't want you to fix it for them. They want to get to their own state of mastery. And so in that 20 minutes, we're mostly just space holding. So there's a few rules. One is that we use our empathic reflections, not questions. There's limits only when limits are needed. So we're not sitting down and telling them all of the rules. We're waiting for limits to be needed before they're set, because I think often kids are just so indoctrinated with rules everywhere they turn that there's not a lot of freedom for self-expression. And that it's structured, and there's this it's 20 minutes. I think we all have it. And so the toys are also really thoughtfully curated in their offering as well. So there's toys that kind of facilitate self-expression. There's toys that facilitate a sense of mastery. There's toys that facilitate creativity. Lots of different things that children are innately trying to work towards. And so this is just a place that we can scaffold the development of that.
It's so inbuilt in her memory of how much enjoyment she gets from doing it. And
how beautiful as well, because your mum also went and bought this special play kit as well. Like, she went and bought all of the things for it and took it on as well.
Yeah, or you give my mum a reason to buy something for our daughters and she'll go and do it. So I'm assuming there'll be one arriving for B in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, and all jokes aside, yes, she would jump at the chance of buying something for them. But connected to that is time. And connected to that is a relationship. And it's actually really funny for anyone out there who, me, which is probably most of you, we've emigrated my dad out from the UK just recently. And so when I think about me as a child growing up in the short space of time that I lived with him, like in our family home, once they'd separated, and we moved, and my dad moved to his house, we spent like every second weekend there or whatever. Not a single toy, nothing. So I had this bedroom. He did decorate it. He put wallpaper on it, and I got to choose like a doona cover. But in the room was a bed and a chest of drawers. I never even filled the drawers. Like I just used to live out of a bag. I'd have a bag for the weekend, and then I'd take my bag back home. That was it. Nothing. So we used to sit on this sofa by this glass table. Can picture it so well. Just doing this all weekend. For those that can't see me, I'm just twiddling my thumbs. That was it. And so when you think about, and now I think he'd say that he wanted to spend more time with us. He wished we'd have gone for longer. He'd have wished probably lots of different things. But make it somewhere I want to go.
Yeah.
You know? There was nothing. And so and so now we've emigrated him out from the UK, and I've got 3 children. What's at Dad's house? A swimming pool, a doll's house, a pretend kitchen, magnetic tiles, baskets of cars. And I'm like, what?
Where was this?
What?
Yeah.
Who is this guy?
Yeah.
And, like I had a load of stuff that I'd moved out from a clinic, and I said to Dad, like, I've got all this stuff. It's kind of duplicate. I have it at home. I'm thinking of moving it on. He's like, I can put that at my house. And so he's kind of got this opportunity now, and he's recognizing that, if you want children in particular, you have to make the environment somewhere they can thrive in. There's nothing there for them to do. What are they going to do? They're probably just going to be really annoying.
Do you think there's an element to you being at his house every second weekend, and obviously not necessarily showing enjoyment because it wasn't really enabled, and then he was probably thinking, why don't my kids want to be with me? Do you think there's an element of that, or do you think it was a little more simple?
I mean, my reactive self would say, I think it's a bit simpler than that, because he's a guy on the surface, but I actually think it's way more complicated than that. And I think there's a lot of he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to have that house. And even now when we talk about homes and houses and what that means, my dad lived in that house for 25 years and hadn't really done anything to it in terms of renovations and stuff. He lived in there for 25 years. It's a large chunk of time, right?
Yeah.
And so he was here in Australia when it sold. He went back home to kind of settle it and sort out a few things. What did he do? He just gave the keys to the estate agent and walked out. It was empty for about 3 months, and then it sold, and then the day that it settled, it was just a transaction. That was all it was. And I remember saying to him, how does it feel to have had your house sell and 25 years you've lived in that? And I was really trying to be how does that feel? And it's very much means to an end.
Wow.
Nothing.
Yeah.
But if you look at his online search history, I guarantee you he's looking at 195 Alistry Lane. That the house that we lived in. Yeah. He still talks about it, thinks it that's still home for him. Yeah. What would it be 28 years later?
Amazing.
That would still be home.
It's a long period of time.
Yeah.
Really long period of time.
Yeah. And he would still say God should never have let that house go. It was really, and so when you think about why did he not put anything at this house to make us want to be there, part of it is that he didn't want to be there either.
and it wasn't home.
Yeah. No.
What as I said, you obviously you get inundated with people wanting and needing help, which is wonderful. It's probably quite overwhelming as well. Is there a part of you that is worried about the frequency, or not the frequency, but the constant questioning around certain topics? Like, is there certain topics that are just constantly brought up every single time, or is it just a range of?
Yeah, there's a whole range of things. I mean, predominantly, the main referral reason will be emotional regulation. And I think part of that is that we are understanding a lot more about emotions, we're expressing a lot more. Parents are being encouraged to hold space for it a lot more. But I think there's a lot of, we have access to too much information, and we have access to too much conflicting information, and we have a real lack of self-trust as a sweeping statement. So people that lack self-trust, people that aren't clear on their values, that don't really understand their why, and are also trying to muddle through and make sense of their own emotions, are turning to these experts on the outside, and they're all saying different things, and they're all trying to clickbait engagement. And so they're saying, you've probably been told to say this. Here's why I say don't say that. So people are so in their own heads about it, with a lack of self-trust, they don't know where they're going with it. And so it's like, help, my child's still expressing their emotions at 6.
Mm.
It's not something that needs to be fixed. Like, for some, yeah, sure, there's things that we can do and we can help them along the way. But so much of it is, what should I be saying? What should I be doing? I don't know. I don't honestly know, because what I would say is right for me, in my context, with my family, with the things that I believe, and the way that I say things. You're a different human with different values and different experiences. Am I not necessarily right for every child in every context in every family? And I think when you so deeply understand what is important to you, the rest becomes easier. So I so deeply, to go back to your comment earlier about the mess, like, I so deeply value my children's free play that I will not see the mess. Because to me, that's a sign of their self-expression, their creativity, their rest. I'm so protective of that.
Yeah.
I'm so protective of play that I will just not have the TV on in the week. Monday to Friday, it doesn't go on in our house at all. And people say, well, how do you do that? I just stay so committed to my why, and it's easy. My kids don't ask for it.
And they don't know what they don't know in that case. I certainly look at mess differently since we spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I certainly do. And we're still cleaning up the other night, and there's a part of putting some of that stuff, mess, whatever it is, away, and thinking about the laughter that I heard when they were playing with it. And you're like, oh, actually, they really enjoyed this moment. So it isn't mess. It was a beautiful moment. They're both asleep now. Let's just put it away, or we leave it for them to explore it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's one of those interesting things that everyone looks at parenting very differently, and I'm guessing from my experience that men and women look at it slightly differently as well.
Yeah.
And do you find that there's more and more engagement from fathers around this, or is there still a bit of a disconnect?
It's hard to say. There are a lot of dads that come in on, like, primarily, like, when I do psychoeducation sessions and consults and stuff, there's a lot of dads that come in. There's a lot of dads really trying to shift. And there are a lot of dads caught up on discipline. And primarily dads. There are some mums as well, but it is primarily this conflict of mums trying to build some emotional intelligence in the kids, and mums trying to hold some space, and mums trying to navigate what it means to discipline and not punish. And so mum's doing lots of reading, listening to all the podcasts, reporting back to dad, this book says to do this and not that. And so it's creating this conflict where dad hasn't read the same books, hasn't read the same podcast, but irrelevant to that, doesn't understand the why, doesn't get why. Like, don't tell me what to say and what to do. I don't understand. I haven't yet bought into this idea. I haven't yet understood what the behavior is about. And so it's like, quite often dad might be the firmer one or might be leaning more on this punishment and everything needs to have a consequence. And so there's this kind of conflict in the relationship over their approach to parenting. And so then I have to be in the middle of that and be like, and help them to navigate that. And well, it sounds like this is a priority for you, and it sounds like this is something that you're really worried about. And like, where does that come from, and what's your fear? And most of the time it's like, well, how are they going to learn respect? Okay, so respect is really important to you. And, mum, like, what do you think about that? Well, respect is really important to me as well. Like, oh, so you want the same thing. Yeah. Like, you guys actually want the same thing, and you're just confused about how you're going to get there. And then you can go backwards from there.
Yeah, mentioning that, I know my wife and I were really strong early days that we never wanted either person to use the other person as a threat. And I heard it a lot when I was a kid, not in my house, because that wasn't the way that our family functioned. My dad certainly wasn't the tough one out of the two of them. But that whole narrative of wait till your dad gets home. Yeah. I heard it at other people's houses. I thought, when my dad gets home, I hope he gets home because he's the one that's going to.
I want him home quick.
I want him home now. He's actually home, and so it is interesting that was for us. That was one of the non-negotiables. We're never going to use the other person as a threat, and I wonder if that still happens in homes. I certainly haven't experienced it. Yeah.
Yep, 100%. Don't let your dad see that. Get that away before your dad gets home. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and one of the things that we're very passionate about is being a team. And if dad says no, it's a no. Because I can remember being like, oh, can I have a packet of crisps? And dad would be like, your dinner's ready in 5 minutes. Like, Mum, can I have a packet of crisps? Like, yeah. YOLO!
Yeah. Can
I
have one too? Yeah.
And there was just no cohesiveness there at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so for us, it's very much like, well, I heard you ask dad, what was the answer? Oh, he said no. I'm like, well, there's your answer then. We're very, dad and I are a team. Our family is a team.
Yeah, it's tough. Amazing chat. I know that there will probably be a second part to this, no doubt. But the way that I love to wrap these discussions or chats up is talking about how proud you are, because I love hearing our eldest, our youngest isn't really there yet, but our eldest talking about how proud she is of something. And they were watching a bit of one of the episodes this morning, and I asked someone that, and they were talking about how proud they are, and you could see how that made her feel. And so I'm really enjoying that part to it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what are you most proud of? 1, 2, 3 things, whatever it might be, of you as a person, as a business owner, as a mum, as a wife. If I said, what are you proud of? What do you think of?
I think I'm proud of having a marriage that feels safe. We are very much committed to the hard. We've had some seasons.
Yeah.
We've had some seasons, but committed to that being a choice that we made, and we're committed to the hard, and I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of the awareness that has come and my capacity and willingness to challenge the status quo. And I think I'm probably almost at a place, I don't talk in absolutes very often, but almost at a place where I don't do things because I feel like I should, and very much question whether or not this is the right thing for me, if this is something that I actually want to do, something that and one of the things that I love to talk about at the moment is willingness. And for me, rest growing up you were busy all the time. Your productivity was very much connected intricately to your worth. And so for me to be able to say, I'm not willing to do that right now, is something that I'm really proud of. And I would say number 3 is always building in the confidence to do this, but building more and more confidence around asking for things that I need. And then also with that, accepting that other people want to help me. And being open to both giving and receiving help. And I guess with that is like this emergence of the interdependence and not the, you know, like I was very much like, oh, I traveled the world on my own. I was like in India on my own at 18, you know, like I was very, very connected to this idea of need nobody, take from nobody, you know, like everything has to be self-sufficient, otherwise you're going to sink. Yeah. And so for me now to be like, actually, it's really cool to have people do stuff for you.
Yeah. And want to.
And then also, yeah, thank you. That would be great. I'd love for you to help me in that way. You know, like it's, and yeah, and I say building in the confidence with it because it's an ever evolving journey of learning. And yeah, and I guess like you, something that is really proud is just cool hearing the work and hearing the way that it's impacting the kids in their own self-development and their own, like, the growth mindset on my kids is at 6 and 4 is phenomenal. Yeah. You know, and I just think they're largely unstoppable with the like self-confidence that they have, and I just think that's
special. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks for going pretty deep.
We didn't expect anything else, did we?
No, I didn't expect anything else, but I really appreciate it. I think, as I said, the more we can talk about these things openly, especially between someone who's a father and someone who's a mother as well, is important. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of our community at That Backyard Property Podcast. We would love it if you could like, comment, or even share with a family member or a friend that might get something useful from today's episode. We can't wait to see you again next Tuesday.